In 1978, Scott Adams published Adventureland, a text based adventure game written for the TRS 80. And in doing so, he wrote the very first adventure game ever written for a personal computer. Riding on its success, he founded Adventure International, and over the course of its 7-year history, Scott Adams wrote 14 more games in what is now called the Scott Adams Adventure series. Today, we're going to take a look at the history of Adventure International and its creator, Scott Adams. As part of its story, we'll look at the entirety of its company's 7-year catalog, Scott Adams or not. So stick around and join us for the next great adventure on yet another trip down memory card lane. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I hope these words find you well. Hello and welcome to the 155th episode of our video game history podcast, A Trip Down Memory Card Lane. Each week, we'll tell you a story about one topic relevant to the current week in gaming history. It can be about a game, a console, a person, a technology. It can be about whatever the heck I want it to be. It just has to be relevant to this week in gaming history. That's all you need to know. Today, we're all going to learn about Adventure International, a video game publishing company that existed between 1979 and 1986. So I'm guessing before most of you were even born. Heck, it existed before I was born, so that's a fair bet. I'm David Casson, and as always, I'm joined by my co host who lives his days 2 words at a time. He's my brother, Rob Casson. Rob, what are the 2 words for today?
Hey, Dave.
Okay, I'll take it. There are way worse words to live by. That's like Hey Jude, but it's Hey Dave instead.
Less cool.
I beg to differ. What are we playing?
Well, Dave, this week has seen some RuneScape and some Rocket League. It has also seen some American Truck Simulator and some PC Building Simulator.
Ooh, PC Building Simulator, huh?
Yes, sir.
How's that one working out?
I mean, it's just another simulator game, you know. It makes me want to build a computer, but I can't afford to, so I do it in a game.
That is very accurate representation of most of our gaming.
Yep. Can't do it in
Like
real life, so do it in a game.
like I want to go to space and build a space colony, but I can't. So
Well, why
oxygen
not?
not included.
True. And actually, you're right. I was playing that today as well.
I didn't even know
So,
that.
yeah, of course you do.
Mm-hmm.
What about yourself, Dave? What have you been up to this week?
Rocket League. I don't think I played anything else. I think just Rocket League. I'm
Wow.
sure I'm sure someone's going to be like, "No, you played something else too," but I really didn't that I can think of in any way shape or form.
No, I think you did, Dave. I think you're crazy.
I mean, I've been on a lot of medications laid up this past week, so that is a distinct possibility. Um, I think last week I talked about playing Forager on my back, so that wasn't this week. No, it's just Rocket League. That's it.
Well, damn.
I know. Sorry.
Sometimes it be like that.
Sorry to disappoint.
You should be.
I know. I know. Oh, this guy plays a ton of video games. What do you play? Rocket League. That's it. Nothing else. I've been trying to sit down and play Far Cry. I have loaded it up many times, and then something comes up, and I get pulled away, and I don't actually play it. So, sorry to disappoint you, everyone.
Well, Dave, you can try again this week.
I sure will. So, Adventure International, founded by Scott Adams. Scott had a brother, a pretty interesting brother, actually. His brother's name was Richard Adams. Richard Adams is like inventor and engineer. And sometimes the people that are around our stories are interesting too. Like Richard Adams invented a video camera when he was 10 years old. And
Oh,
like, yeah, just like at home made a video camera. He was in the Miami Herald because he asked the newspaper to help him find a TV station that would help him tune the camera at 10 years old. Oh, he got it working at 12. So this probably would have been more just a 12. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty cool. He went to the Florida Institute of Technology and he created an interface and software to connect an electronic organ to the computer so he could record music to the computer.
hmm.
And then and then we are so blessed because he at one point built a 16-bit computer at home, and his brother, per our topic today, Scott Adams, learned how to use that computer to program his first computer game. Well, he was teaching at, not teaching, he was going to school at the Florida Institute of Technology. So, yeah, Richard Adams, really fascinating. We have him to thank. So, Scott Adams took this computer and in his free time, he started learning game programming. In 1975, he wrote a graphical action game that was similar to Space War. Basically, after that, he started to spread out. So in 1978, he wrote an adventure style game on a personal computer. It was on a Radio Shack TRS. What do we learn that that stands for?
The Radio Shack 80.
It's a TRS 80 Model 1, and he wrote it in BASIC on a 16 kilobyte TRS 80. And it was an adventure style game for personal computers. Now, we know this now to be the first ever adventure style game written for a personal computer. Now, let me preface that by saying that there are earlier graphical, not graphical, but adventure style, like text based adventure games. We know, for instance, that Colossal Cave was written in 1976. We've talked about Colossal Cave in more than one episode. Will Crowther wrote that on a mainframe computer, which is the PDP 10. So there were earlier adventure games that were written on mainframe computers. But Scott Adams here wrote the very first one on a personal computer, and that is his claim to fame. And these early text adventures, they weren't that sophisticated, and that's what's really fascinating. One of the things that's always fascinated me about them. So we've talked about this before, but I'll give a little, we'll do a little refresher on it. So text-based games has what's called a parser, and the parser is basically your library of words, like how the program recognizes the words that you do that you use to do actions in the game. So it would be the thing that scans what you type in that knows the difference between south and north, for instance. Back then, we were dealing with very limited memory, 16 kilobytes. So, of course, you can't put a parser that knows every word on the face of the earth. Nowadays, with AI, they don't even have to have parsers. The AI can interpret what they want to do and rewrite it into something that the software recognizes and move on. Like, where we are in programming in this genre is amazing, to be totally honest with you. But back then, we only had low amounts of memory. 16 kilobytes, not a lot of memory. Um, and so the parsers are very limited. So the parser in all these early text adventures that Scott Adams wrote were ones that really only recognized the first three letters of each command. So, for instance, the three phrases scream bear, scratch bear, or screw bear are all recognized as the same command by a parser in these early text games,
So if it's the
which is,
first three characters, is it of each word or just
yes, each word. Yeah.
okay? So you could effectively even write like screen bean.
Yeah. Yeah. Scream bean,
Neat.
scratch bean, screw bean.
That's interesting.
I mean, it's what we had back then.
No, I get it.
The fact that we had text adventures was amazing, you know?
It's just crazy to think about that. Like someone could still kind of just muddle their way through it because they're bad at spelling.
Well, there were other things too. Like some of these early text adventures had instruction manuals that told you what you could and couldn't use.
Okay.
Um, I'm not sure about these to be honest with you, but I mean like Zork I played. That's a really popular text adventure game. That one that was easy to find out what you could use and couldn't use, to be fair, it had a more advanced parser, but things were what they were. So yeah, so he creates these adventure games and decides at one point to co-found. That was, let's see, 1978 is when he wrote his first one, and that would be called Adventureland. So Adventureland is what we now recognize to be the first text adventure video game for microcomputers. It is a game that involves searching for 13 lost artifacts in a fantasy setting. So you control the game in a text adventure through written commands, so they can be a single word. Single words that would have worked in this game are things like north, south, east, west, up, and down. Like I said, you can use two word verb noun phrases like screw bear or climb tree. This game only recognized about 120 words. And again, it only recognized the first three letters, but that's how you made it work. And yeah, so in order to complete the game, you have to collect 13 lost artifacts. They are a statue of Paul Bunyan's blue ox, Babe, a jeweled fruit, a golden fish, a dragon's egg, a golden net, a magic carpet, a diamond necklace, a diamond bracelet, a pot of rubies, the royal honey, a crown, a magic mirror, and a firestone. Now, this game is very similar to Colossal Cave Adventure, but it's kind of a scaled down version of it. And it was popular. It was incredibly popular. One other thing that you should know about some of these early games that's really fascinating, we sold them, like people sold them, but they also sold them to magazines. So you could go into various publications back here in the 80s and open it up, and the entire source code would be in the magazine for you to write on your own computer and play the game that way. You didn't always have to go buy a disc or software depending on the game. I mean, your big games, big publishers were always going to do it that way, but a lot of your little guys who were new starting out or things like that would sell it, like I said, sell it to different software magazines that would publish the source code in the magazine, and you would recreate it and play the game. I
How big of the source code are we talking here? Because like I feel like it would be pages long.
It is. It
Okay,
is. It's, I mean, we're not talking like 100 pages. I mean, 10, 20. I don't remember. I had books of them. They sold books of design your own software. And I used to do it too. I used to go through and type everything. And then when you hit like run and it ran, you like, I was so proud of myself. Like, that is so cool when you're like, 7, 8, 9 years old and you're writing software like games. Like, you're writing the games. You're writing the games.
man, I still got that same level of excitement writing Java code in college.
I
So like,
know.
anytime you have a code that runs successfully, it's a great feeling.
Very, very true. So you could run the software and then, we didn't really have the ability to save the software. So for a lot of us, like the moment you turned off your computer, all that work was gone. So you would like write the game, play the game, try to keep the computer on as long as possible. And then at one point you'd recognize like, okay, I can't do this anymore. I got to turn it off now.
No
So event,
floppy disk to save it to, huh?
no, I mean, you didn't always have the ability to read and write. Like writing wasn't always an option.
Gotcha.
So Adventureland was originally written for the Tandy Radio Shack 80, but it was also ported to other systems as they came out later on. So it eventually ended up on the Apple II, the 8-bit Ataris, the TI-99, the
Like the
PET,
calculator.
yes, the VIC-20, the Commodore 64, IBM PC, ZX Spectrums, BBC Micros, Acorn Electrons, Dragons, and XD Sorcerers. It ported its way to just about everything.
I'm just shocked at the calculator.
I mean, it's a text-based game.
I mean, all right, you got a point. It's
Uh,
still just crazy.
All right, I'm gonna stretch this out as long as I can. It's not the calculator. Texas Instruments made microcomputers at one time in their life.
Oh, well, that makes a lot more sense. But I remember my TI-89.
Yeah, yeah, they made microcomputers in the late 70s, early 80s. I think they stopped through the 80s, but they made microcomputers. You picked up on the well because it's a calculator, but you didn't pick up on the PET. Yeah, I've never heard of a PET before, have you?
No,
That was a Commodore microcomputer, like before the Commodore 64.
oh, it's like the Commodore 32.
Essentially, yeah, it's more like the Commodore 16, but you got the right idea. So
Okay, so 16. Yeah, I gotcha.
I don't even think it was the 16 because the VIC 20 was 8-bit. What was the
Oh,
P?
so is it
What?
still
What?
4?
It is. Hold on, let me look at TI release. What's it say? It ran a 6502, which was an 8-bit microprocessor. So
Okay.
it was an 8-bit. So it ported out to a bunch of everything. They sold essentially shareware version of it. There was a 3 treasure version entitled Adventure Zero Special Sampler that they sold at like a cheap price. And then in 1982, it was re-released with graphics, which allowed the player to see the scenery and the objects. Adventureland, little bit of trivia for you guys, is the very first text adventure game ever written for a microcomputer, and it was written and released by Scott Adams in 1978.
To recap everything that was already said.
Yes. So it was a success. Needless to say, people were already in love with adventure games. Like we know that Colossal Cave Adventure was incredibly popular on the campuses that had the mainframes, so that was a thing. So now that we have microcomputer company doing them, it was popular. So eventually, that was really popular, and he decided at that point to co-found a company with his wife at the time. Her name was Alexis Adams, and they founded a company in 1979 in the wake of that success called Adventure International. And for a bunch of time, they were on a pretty good. I mean, they were pumping them out. Their next game was a game called Pirate Adventure or Pirate Cove. It is the second game in what we now know as they're the Adventure series. They were called the Scott Adams Adventure series. Most of the games that Adventure International wrote are part of the series. There are a few that aren't. We'll talk about that momentarily. But so it starts out with Adventureland, and then the Adventure number 2 is called Pirate Adventure. That's how the discs are labeled. Like if you look at the box art, number 1, number 2, so on and so forth. So number 2, Pirate Adventure. Pirate Adventure. It is based on ideas that Alexis gave him. The setting is inspired by Treasure Island, and it involves a quest to retrieve Long John Silver's lost treasures. So, like the first Adventureland game, it involved moving from location to location, picking up objects found there, and using them elsewhere to unlock puzzles. You moved with the locations north, south, east, west, or you did the verb noun combo like climb tree, grab coconut. I'm assuming may have been one of them. I don't know.
All in the search of some fried fish, huh?
On the search of some fried fish. I know. I haven't thought about Long John Silver's in forever. There are none here. Opening up a crappy seafood chain would be suicide here.
Yeah, you got a point.
Yeah, yeah. You don't do that when you're on the Gulf Coast. So and basically, this one had some pretty cool progression. You started the game in a flat, and you moved outside, and then you found a bit of magic to move to Pirate Island. On Pirate Island, you had to build a ship to reach Treasure Island, and on Treasure Island, you had to find a couple pieces of treasure. There are you have a pirate alley. You have a pirate ally, and so it was the first text adventure game in the series, maybe even that we know of, that had a second character, which is kind of cool.
Could you play the second character?
Well, you kind of played all the. I don't know the answer to that. Like if you played, or if he was just there causing havoc. I what I do like though. So the magic phrase that you needed to reach the island in the game was "say yo ho," and that became the name of a long running column in Softside magazine written by Scott Adams.
Nice.
Say yo ho.
Yo ho.
So, like the first one, the source code was eventually published, and eventually it was republished with an addendum in a couple years later in like 1981 that allowed others to kind of learn how the engine worked and modify it to create their own adventures. Good guy Scott Adams. And yeah, so you have the Pirates Cove. It is a, a good adventure, and with the right tools you could find all of Long John Silver's treasures. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And who doesn't like treasure, Rob?
People who don't like treasure.
Very true. But any good treasure, to find it, it takes the help of some really great tools. Anything worth working or fighting for or accomplishing is going to take good tools. Am I right?
You got a point there, Dave. I think you're right.
Absolutely. And when it comes to good tools, if you're looking for some great tools to podcast with, look no further than Zencaster, the platform that we here at A Trip Down Memory Card Lane use to record, sometimes edit, and publish our podcast. You know, one of the cool things about Zencaster is how easy it is to get everyone together and record. Rob, I mean, like, I create the lobbies every week, so I set everything up. And how do you connect to the lobby?
Well, you send me a link. I open the link and then enter my information, make sure my devices are right, and join the lobby. It's as simple as that.
Do you have to do anything else to make this work?
No, not a damn thing. It is super easy. Plus, Zencaster also has automatic post production that makes editing a breeze.
100%. So look, I'm going to admit this, I love this podcast, but my life gets busy sometimes. Some weeks I have all the time to sit down and edit out every ooh and make this sound great, and other weeks I have to take shortcuts. I need a little bit of help. And when I need a little bit of help, I turn to Zencaster's post-production platform where they make this podcast sound great and help me get rid of some of the unwanted parts of our podcast, and I you just can't beat its ease and usability. It's absolutely fantastic.
So, whether you're a seasoned podcaster or just starting out, Zencaster's got you covered. It's user friendly and intuitive, makes recording a stress free experience.
I mean, I love ever since we found Zencaster, it's so easy. I used to be so nervous to like invite our friends onto this podcast until we found this software. Because remember the old stuff that we used, how like there was more than one time when we would record an episode and then it wouldn't sync up. Like we would lose the audio and we'd have to go back and re-record. Do you remember those days?
Oh, yeah, it was a nightmare.
And we haven't had to do that at all since we switched over to Zencaster, have we?
No, it's been a pretty seamless process ever since then.
Yeah, it's fantastic. It records all the audio separately in separate tracks locally on each user's device, and then when the when you hit stop, when your podcast is over and you say, hey, we're done with this episode, it like syncs them up and uploads them all to the server, so you have like links for each individual applicant, each individual participant, and you just click, download track one belonging to this person, download track two belonging to, usually track one is David and track two is Rob, and then track three is our whatchamacallits, and I can just pop those into my editing software and away we go. It's so stupid easy. I would highly recommend it to anyone. And if you're looking to try Zencaster, they do have some trial, some free tiers to their service. But if you want all the good stuff like the post production, higher quality audio recording, higher quality video recording, The lot of really good features. They have paid platforms.
And we have a special offer for all of you listeners.
We do very
So head
much.
on over to zencaster.com/pricing and use our offer code, Memory Card Lane, all one word. And you can get up to 30% off the first month of any of those paid plans.
That's zencastr.com/pricing and use the offer code Memory Card Lane to get 30% off the first month of any Zencaster premium podcasting plan.
So record, collaborate, and create with Zencaster today.
Use it, guys. I can't recommend it enough. It absolutely changed the way we did things. But you know who didn't change the way they do things, Rob?
I'm going to guess Scott Adams, Dave.
No, Scott Adams definitely did not change the way he did things, because once you have a successful way of doing things, a successful formula for games that people are going to buy, why change it? You know, that's why we have the Call of Duty Modern Warfare every year. Who wants to change that? It's great.
You know, it's sad that that's true. It really is. I hate it because evolution is the way, but damn Call of Duty.
We do it to ourselves, right?
True.
Because
No, absolutely.
if we wouldn't buy it, they wouldn't keep doing it. So gamers do it to themselves. There is nobody else to blame. If one of those yearly editions of Madden or Call of Duty or Need for Speed or anything that they rinse and repeat like that, anytime they do it, if there's one version that just falls completely on its face, that always breeds evolution. So if we want it, we have to do something about it. And that's just exercise a little bit of restraint. That's all it takes. And don't buy something. That's it. Just don't buy it. It's not that hard.
But things.
Well, it's hard. It's hard because, you know, one friend buys it and then everyone wants to play with their friends, and then it just snowballs, and away we go. So Pirate Adventure came out in 1979. He produced another game called Secret Mission and then another game called Voodoo Castle the same year. Voodoo Castle was written by both Scott and Alexis in 1979. It's number 4 in the Adventureland series. And this, just like all the others, you know, you move from location to location, you use your verb noun way to control it. And Voodoo Castle involves a plot where you have to wake up a Count Dracula type character named Count Christo, and Count Christo is laying in a coffin at the starting, like where you start the game, and you know right away that your goal is to wake him up. And so you have to go around the Voodoo Castle collecting certain items, overcoming obstacles. Some of the obstacles are like there's an exploding test tube, there's a doorway that's too small to pass through normally without some magic or trickery, just things like that. Grab the items to wake up Count Crystal and win the game. That's basically Voodoo Castle. No, nothing too fancy about it. But they backed that up right away with a game called The Count, which is number 5 in the Adventureland series, right?
Right.
So this is a Scott Adams game, and again, you move from location to location. You pick up your objects. You do whatever you need to do. And in this one, you have been sent to defeat Count Dracula by the local Transylvania village. So you have to gather items from around his castle and then use said items to defeat him. Now, this game is unique. It's different from the rest. This is the first time we saw a change in the formula. This is different because it uses time. The count is set over 3 days. There are certain problems that you have to solve on particular days. There are certain events that happen at particular times on certain days. You also have to avoid being attacked at night because that's when the vampire, wakes up. So it involves playing differently depending on the time and depending on the day. So a little level of complexity added to the design of this game. Kind of cool, huh?
Yeah, it is. But it's at least it's not the same count from the original from Voodoo Castle because you imagine doing all that work to try and save him just to
I know, wake
have to
him
kill
up.
him.
I mean, it makes sense though. Maybe you woke him up and he's not what you expected. Instead of being cool, he's a murderer, and you're like, ah, crap. Well, now we got to kill you. Sorry.
Well, I
And
mean, it's a vampire. What do you expect? You think
I
they're gonna
mean,
be friendly? Like, hey guys, how's it going?
have you
Gonna go
ever
drink that
seen
cow's blood.
you ever seen Twilight before? They're friendly vampires.
Yeah, but they sparkle.
Well, sparkle vampires are still vampires.
I don't know, Dave. It's debatable.
Very true. So, Adventureland number 5 is a game called Strange Odyssey. It controls the same way. In Strange Odyssey, you start out stranded on a tiny asteroid in a damaged spaceship, and you have to stumble across aliens, use their teleportation devices to travel to distant worlds, collect various treasure and materials that you need to repair the spacecraft,
Neat.
and get off of the tiny asteroid.
Is it timed as well, or was that only the count?
So far, the only one that I know of is that's. I mean, there might be another time one. I think there's one more, but time wasn't something he played with a whole lot in the Adventureland series.
Gotcha.
So after Strange Odyssey, and these are all 1979. Adventureland 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 were all published in 1979.
Holy shoot.
Yeah, they were cooking. They were cooking. So Adventureland number 7 is a game called Mystery Funhouse. I'm gonna leave it at that. I don't need to say anything.
I think you do, Dave.
Yeah, I know. So Mystery Funhouse was produced in only 1 week.
Oh.
I'm gonna let that sit there because we were just talking about how many games they
I mean,
released.
yeah, they released quite a few games so in that year, so I guess some had to come out pretty quick. I'm
Yeah,
gonna guess it has something to do with a funhouse and a
very true.
mystery that comes up from it.
So this one's considered one of the if not the most difficult games in the Adventureland series, and you explore a fun house as you correctly pointed out to locate a set of secret plans, and you have to solve puzzles to get there. And like this fun house had some fun things. It's not like your Hollow Mirror stuff. There's a maze, there's a shooting gallery. You have to charm a mermaid. You have to turn off a steam calliope.
You mean a Calliope?
Sure, we'll go with Calliope. I did it like the I did it like the Calliope is the what, Greek or Latin, whatchamacallit.
Yeah, that whatchamacallit.
The Greek muse by the same name is pronounced Calliope, but the instrument was usually pronounced Calliope. Calliope. There you go.
Wait, actually?
Yeah, 100%. 100%. That's
I
literally
was just being facetious. That's hilarious.
yeah. So on the Wikipedia entry, because I confused myself for a second because I'm like, I know you're right, but are you right? So the pronunciation of the word has long been disputed and is often pronounced differently inside and outside the groups that use it. The Greek muse by the same name is produced Calliope, but the instrument was usually pronounced Calliope by the people who played it.
Hmm.
A 19th century magazine attempted to settle the dispute by publishing this rive. Proud folk stare after me, call me Calliope. Tooting joy, tooting hope, I am the Calliope. That's fucking
Wow.
cool, actually.
That is.
That is really cool. I love it. I love it. That's good. That's my learn something new for today for sure.
God damn it.
Oh man. Okay, so they have to turn off a steam calliope that is so loud the player's instructions are misunderstood, which is a homage to the loud room in the first Zork game. In one room, there's a trampoline so the player can enter, deposit items, and exit. The player that can then carry the trampoline around, regardless of how much it's holding, thus extending one's carrying capacity indefinitely. Violent solutions to puzzles are discouraged by a gameplay feature which sees the character player ejected from the fun house by a bouncer whenever certain commands are typed.
Oh. So
It's
you
the
can't
best.
say kill guy.
Mm-mm. Or else you get booted and you have to start over. That's
Well,
kind of
damn.
funny.
That is hilarious, actually.
All right, your last game of 1979 is Adventureland number, what are we on? 8? Adventureland number 8. It's called Pyramid of Doom. Can you guess what this one's about?
I'm gonna guess it's about a city that is underwater.
True. Very true. So this one actually isn't written by Scott Adams. It's written by Alvin Files. He independently reverse engineered one of Adams' adventure games, wrote a new game using what he learned, and then submitted it back to Adams, and Adams then tweaked it to release it as part of the series.
Wow,
Isn't that cool?
that is really freaking cool. Did the guy
It,
get a job after that?
I mean, he got paid for this. I would assume since his name is on it. You know,
I mean, yeah, but hey, this guy did all this. Could at least offer him a job. Be like, hey, we are obviously know you're talented.
yeah, it's pretty cool. So the object of Pyramid of Doom, no surprise, is to enter an Egyptian pyramid and plunder its treasures. You have various challenges related to that. There's an angry mummy, there's a purple worm, and there's an irate desert nomad. So, Pyramid of Doom. All right, so going into 1980, Adventureland number 9, Ghost Town. It's funny because you've already used this, haven't you? Didn't you say one of the other ones was about a ghost town?
I don't believe I did. No,
Ah,
Dave.
gotcha. So Ghost Town is a game in which a player searches a western ghost town for treasure. That's all.
Oh, so can you just type find treasure?
Oh, that's a good one. I have no clue. Because it says you get bonus points for performing additional deeds, so maybe you can and it doesn't matter.
Maybe.
Oh, there's a review for this one in the Dragon number 44 that says this is the toughest game he'd seen so far in the Adventureland series, and said that Scott Adams has really outdone himself on this one.
So apparently you can't just put find treasure.
Apparently, you can't just find treasure. Now, there were some other Adventureland games that don't have entries, unfortunately, that we can really know much about, other than, like, there's an entry that has their box art. 1980 saw Savage Island. 1981 saw Savage Island Part 2. Adventureland number 12 is called Golden Voyage, which was published in 1981. Adventureland 13 was released in 1984. It's called Sorcerer of Claymore Castle. And Adventureland number 14 is called Return to Pirate's Isle. When did we go to Pirate's Isle? On Pirate Adventure? You think that's the one from Pirate Adventure?
Yeah, it became an isle after the cove was attacked.
Oh, you think you're good with that one, don't you?
Oh yeah.
So all these games were written at Adventure International. In 1980, they were writing the first 5 games on a VIC-20. VIC-20 is a Commodore 8-bit computer sold by Commodore Business Machines. It was their business one, so that's where they started. Before they ported them. But by 1983, the company had 40 employees, so they got big, basically. Oh, here, this one's got some other stuff. So Savage Island, the most challenging adventure games. The player is not even aware of the game's goal. If the player completes part one, that they are giving one of two passwords to play the second part. That's all it says about it. Golden Voyage, sail the world to find the Fountain of Youth. That's pretty cool. And he developed the games on an in-house adventure editor, right?
Right.
So, they had their own little. That's the thing that they published in the magazine that allowed other to kind of learn how that worked, and it was used in other series too. They took that interpreter and they use it in other series, which is kind of interesting.
It is. So were there other games that Adventure International produced, Dave?
Other than the Adventureland games, absolutely. They weren't just a text adventure game. There were other games too. They ended up cloning some arcade games to the TRS-80 and to Atari 8-bit computers, like Lunar Lander. That was a arcade game that they brought over. Missile Attack. Basically, it's a clone of Missile Command. They brought that over. Project Omega is a little bit, it's a unique game. You have to manage a space colony, so that sounds like something I may have tripped on at one point, though I don't remember it.
That definitely sounds like your thing.
I know, 100%. They developed a strategy oriented war game called Slag. The game cover
Great
is
name.
the game cover has a guy with like a helmet on, like with one of those old school like satellite phones, and there's like, I don't know, artillery and missiles flying all around him, and it says "slag him." That's how I hear his
He's
voice.
clearly in the military and he's using a
Slag.
call to the artillery with the coordinates.
True statement. 100%. So Slag was a multiplayer game in which each player controlled a nation and had to destroy the industry of all the other players. So a little strategy oriented war game. There was a game called Eliminator. It is a clone of Defender. If you'll remember, we talked about that when we did the episode recently on copyright law. What did we do that for? What was the
Mm,
actual? I mean, I know we did a whole episode on it, but I don't remember the actual topic. Do you remember what the actual topic was?
I don't. If you
Why do
don't, I
we
definitely don't.
why do we do this every week? Why am I so bad about remembering things like? I mean, we did a whole episode on copyright law, which we should remember. Breakouts, the brick game.
Oh yes, yes, Breakout. Yep.
So back then, there wasn't really copyright law here until late '80s, early '90s. So I mean, everyone was just cloning games and republishing. So yeah, so Rear Guard was a clone of what I say, Defender.
You said Eliminator was, so you got
No,
that a little
that
mixed up.
okay, that's right. You're right. So Rear Guard is its own game.
No,
Rear
no, no.
Guard.
Rear Guard was the
Nope,
clone of Defender. Eliminator was its own game.
you
I
are
thought.
correct. Yeah, yeah, you're good. We're good. So 1981, they released a game called Stone of Sisyphus. Sisyphus,
Syphilis.
Sisyphilus. It's a solo dungeon adventure.
Well, that would make sense if it's the Stone of Syphilis.
There is a space action game published later that year called Zost in Space.
I got totally exhausted in space, man.
That's exactly it. In Zost in Space, you have to collect trading units and eliminate enemy ships in various sectors. So that's pretty cool. They released a single screen fixed shooter called Bug Off. In Bug Off, you have to control a variety of bugs that swarm out of a Florida sinkhole and endanger the player's garden. You basically control a chemical sprayer, and you use the sprayer to control the the bugs. I mean, that's not you know.
Well, to control them, as in just stop them from eating your garden.
There's a game called Preppy. Preppy is basically a Frogger clone. We talked about it in our Frogger episode. It follows a prep schooler, a dragon. Or no, isn't he an alligator? His name is Wadsworth Overcash, and he has to navigate the hazards of a country club to retrieve golf balls.
Oh, scary stuff out there.
I know, I know. 1982, they released a game called Sea Dragon. It's similar to a arcade game called Scramble, but played underwater instead of not. Basically, you control a submarine that can shoot torpedoes forward and upwards, and yeah. 1982, there was a game called Tutti Frutti. I don't even want to
Oh,
elaborate on that because I just, I like it. It had its own theme song. You know what I mean?
oh, so you remember this one?
No, I don't remember this one. What's Tutti Frutti? The object of Tutti Frutti is to eat all the fruits within the time limit. The game sets the stage inside a jungle, clearing surrounded by trees, where the player is constantly pursued by deadly bugs as he races against the clock to clear a level.
Hmm.
There was a Preppy 2.
Oh, nice. What was that
It,
one about?
it's called The Continuing Saga of Wadsworth Overcash.
Oh, wow.
It replaces the country club setting with an abstract overhead view maze.
Okay. Was it still like Frogger style?
Yep, kind of not though. It looks like this is more. It's a maze game. Preppy 2 was a maze game. It wasn't like Frogger. Preppy 1 looks a lot like Frogger, but Preppy 2 is a maze game.
Interesting.
In 1983, they produced a game called Rally Speedway. It's a top-down racing game. It's That's it. Top-down racing game. Had some interesting stuff. You could change. There were options where you could change how vehicles handle, such as top speed, acceleration, and whether the roads are wet, dry, or icy. They also programmed an integrated editor so you could create and save your own racetrack. So that's kind of cool.
Oh, neat.
Here's a fun little fact I didn't know. Rally Speedway directly influenced the 1991 Nintendo Entertainment System game Micro Machines. I fucking loved that Micro Machines game. Loved it.
Yeah, I remember that one.
Wish they still had them. In 1983, so at one point, Adventure International got into licensing. In 1983, they won the rights to develop a game around a movie called The Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai Across the Eighth Dimension. In case you don't know, Buckaroo Banzai, that's what we call it, is a 1984 American science fiction film. It has like John Lithgow, Jeff Goldblum, Christopher Lloyd, Peter Weller is the main person, and basically it centers upon the efforts of Dr. Buckaroo Banzai, who is a physicist, a neurosurgeon, a test pilot, and a rock star,
Wow.
to save the world by defeating a band of interdimensional aliens called Red Lectroids from Planet 10.
That is quite the premise.
I know.
Was it a good movie, Dave?
I don't remember it at all. I'm not going to pretend that I do.
Well, damn.
Sorry. In 1985, they released a video game called Robin of Sherwood, The Touchstones of Rhiannon. It was a tie in to the television series Robert of Sherwood. And basically, I mean, you do Robin Hood things.
Sounds like a fun time, Dave.
They also made a Gremlins video game, Gremlins
Did
the
they really?
Adventure. They did.
Didn't know about that.
So there was all sorts of fun stuff that they did.
So, you said what happened to the company? They just
Well, we're not there yet because they did one more series that is worth talking about, the Quest Probe series.
oh. Hmm.
So
What's Quest Probe?
Quest Probe is a trilogy of graphical adventure video games that feature Marvel Comics characters. So there are three of them. As I said, it's a trilogy. There is Quest Probe featuring the Hulk, Quest Probe featuring Spider Man, and Quest Probe featuring Human Torch and the Thing. There was also going to be a fourth one called Quest Probe X Men, but it was never released. Basically, the game's narrative, like the first one, Quest Probe the Hawk, follows Hawk and his humor, and his alter ego Bruce Banner, and they have to explore the materious layer of the Chief Examiner, which was character created for this, and yeah, so they had these three games. And this one, Bruce finds himself bound to a chair in a chamber, and he transforms into the Hawk and gets out of there and finds himself in like this weird dome-shaped building, grassy field in the middle of nowhere, and he happens upon Doctor Strange, who tells him to look for um, other things. He comes across Ultron. He comes across Ant-Man. It's kind of like a greatest hits of Marvel characters from the time. Um,
Even now time. When did you say this was done?
84.
Well, damn. It's crazy. We've come full circle 40 years.
And it's pretty cool that they actually got the rights to the Marvel characters and they started to create these games. They had all intention to do 12 or 13 of them, but it just wasn't meant to be.
Can you imagine if they tried it again now? That'd be a hit.
Very true. Very, very true.
So after those, did Adventure International continue on, or did after
No,
Marvel that was it?
no, they didn't. They never really changed their formula of text-based adventures, and slowly the adventure genre became graphical, and that wasn't something that Adventure International was really prepared for. So that's not to say that they didn't do it graphics. I mean, we talked about all those clones, so there were graphics. The Quest Probe had graphics, but frankly, they were just inferior to the graphical adventures that all the other companies were producing, and so they lost popularity. Their market share just plummeted. Right as the video game market crashed in 1983, they employed 50 staff and they published titles. They were a publishing company. I'm just talking about Adventureland games, but they were publishing games from other companies to the tune of like 300 different games.
Oh wow.
But the video game market crashed, and they lost market share because they couldn't adapt to the times, and that was it. In 1986 they declared bankruptcy, and that was it for Adventure International. Just like that, just as quickly as they were there, they were gone, which is
Well,
really
damn.
which is really disappointing.
It is. So did either Scott or Alexis do anything after that?
Well, Scott and Alexis divorced a few years after all this. I think like 87. They didn't stick together at all. So that, that ended.
Okay. So did Scott do anything?
He did. He absolutely did. He became a senior programmer for a company. In 2013, he released a Bible-based game called The Inheritance. You are basically like the protagonist of a story, and it's a text adventure. It is what it is. I'll leave it at that. In 2016, he created a new company called Clopas to begin publishing games in a genre that he called conversational adventure games. They were very similar to what he was used to, his early text adventure games, except now in 2016, the technology was so greater that they supported full natural language sentences, something we really talked about. The first game that he put out under that company was called Escape the Groomer. Escape the Groomer was the first episode in a bunch of, I think it was the second episode. The game's basically called The Lost Legends of Redwall, and it is a licensed video game based on the Redwall series. Redwall being a series of children's fantasy books that were published between 86 and 2011. It's a British writer, so I know they're not as well known over here in the States, but Scott Adams was a fan, and so he able to create this company and develop these games based on the Redwall series. And that I mean that's pretty much it. They he remarried eventually, and we haven't heard from him really since he published the Redwall game, and I think the last episode of that to come out was 2018.
Hmm.
Fun little thing that I on though, looking back through their games, there is one game in the whole series that Alexis is the only name on it, and that's Voodoo Castle, the Count Cristo one,
Wow.
right?
So she did
Scott,
that one herself, huh?
yeah, Scott said that she used his tools to create 95% of that game by herself, so he gave her full billing on it.
Wow. That's
One
impressive.
one character from that game, Medium Megan, named after the couple's daughter, may be the first woman with dialogue in a video game ever.
Wow.
That's a
Okay.
little bit of
That's
trivia for you too.
that's a lot of trivia from just one company that I had never heard of prior to this episode.
I know. So Adventure International created the first text adventure games for personal computers, probably created the first woman character for a video game ever, and published games. I mean, just as quickly as they started, they were gone. Let's be honest, 79 to 86 was not a long time. So they came, they went. Unfortunately, there are video game companies that come much quicker nowadays. But they did a lot of really good things. And like I said, he had beat Colossal Cave Adventure by a few years. Colossal Cave Adventure, of course, being the first adventure game ever written. And we've talked about that a few times. So if you're curious about going back to the very beginning and learning where the adventure style genre comes from, period, you can check out those episodes by going to our website at www.memorycardlane.com. Rob, what else can you do on our website?
Well, Dave, you can find a calendar of upcoming events, episodes that we're going to be talking about. You can find links to our social medias, to our Discord server where you can come hang out with Dave and I. You can find links to our Patreon. Uh, and I already mentioned you can find links to our social medias. I can be found on several platforms as Rob_O_Raptor and Dave.
I can be found on various platforms as David is Wrong. And touching back on our Patreon, every week now, you can join our Patreon for, I think I got $1 tier and a $2 tier there. So it's not a huge investment. I support a couple other podcasts that friends do with $1 a month tier. It's not a big investment from me. It's $1. $12 a year. I mean, don't go out to lunch once over the course of a year. Come on, man. So for $1 a year, you can join our Patreon. On our Patreon, we've been posting unedited, and this week should be interesting, and no ad versions of every episode. So if you wanted to listen to one or the other, at least with the unedited, you can hear some of the stupid crap that Rob and I banter about to one another that I make sure never ends up in the final versions. You can do so by becoming a patron of ours. We would appreciate the support. So each week, we tell you a story about one game relevant to the current week in gaming history. While doing so, we hope to teach you something new about the game, technology. I teach you something new about the topic. Let's just go with that, about the topic. What it took from the world as its inspiration, or what it gave back to the world in its legacy. One of the greatest things about doing this podcast is that as we research for each episode, we learn new things. So as we teach you things, we learn things as well. That's why I love doing this each week, because I have a brain that just loves knowledge. And doing this podcast week in, week out really lets me just lay into that and learn things. And that's fantastic. In recognition of this cycle, in that as we teach you, we learn, we like to go roundtable and talk about what we learned every week, what our takeaways are. So, Rob, what's your biggest takeaway of the week?
Well, Dave, I think it's that you can play a text adventure game on a calculator. It's crazy what those TI
Okay.
graphing calculators are
All right.
capable of.
So, in this case, no, but you can. And we both know
Oh, of
that.
course, yeah, absolutely. You can play freaking like Tetris on one,
Doom.
man.
I think they've made Doom on a Texas calculator before, haven't they?
I absolutely guarantee it. There's no way they haven't. That's yeah, no, it's still funny to me, but I think that it's interesting. Like, obviously it didn't last very long, but it's not a genre that I really think about with text adventures. So it's crazy to know that they was so popular for such a short time, and also the fact that they were blasting out, you said, what was it, 9 games in that one year?
Yeah, like, oh, make, I mean, one of those games they produce in a week. Can you imagine? I mean, I say can you imagine, but we have weekend game jams now where people produce entire games in a weekend. So what do I know?
I mean, yeah, it's a lot different now, though, I feel, than back then. Like, I mean, I guess the complexity of the games now done in the same amount of time is just different. So it's not that different, but it's still, you're right. It's just insane to think about it.
It's crazy.
So that's, I think that's my big takeaway, just the speed at which these games took off and that they were able to produce them, and just that it was a popular genre altogether. It's crazy to me.
True.
So what about you, Dave? What's your big takeaway from this week?
Calliope, Calliope. That's how you say it. See,
Helio.
I
Yep.
can't even get it right when I want to get it wrong.
Man.
Calliope. The fact that the instrument is called Calliope, and then there was a cool rhyme to help you between Calliope and Calliope cracks me up. I mean, I'm sure at one time we learned that, being that we were, doing music and music theory for so long, but I don't
Nope.
know.
Never.
Lost, no,
100% not. I never knew that Calliope was a thing. I've only ever heard Calliope.
that's hilarious. I love it. I love it, love it, love it. So that's my takeaway for today. All right,
Right
Rob.
on,
Well,
Dave.
before I take it out of here and into next week, is there anything that you'd like to add to today's episode?
Well, Dave, as always, I do want to take one quick moment to say thank you so much to everyone for listening. It means the world to us, and we hope that you enjoy listening. Otherwise, why the hell are you here?
Very true. With that being said, thank you. Let's look at next week. Rob, we're doing one of our favorites, aren't we?
I don't know, Dave. Are we?
Yeah, we're definitely doing one of our favorites.
Well, what are we doing, Dave?
Well, next week, we're going to look at the 2007 first person shooter game, Bioshock.
Hell yeah, let's go.
Yeah, I know, right? We both love
Time
the
to shock
Bioshock
those
series.
bios.
So, Bioshock borrows from a lot of dystopian and utopian thinkers like Ayn Rand, George Orwell, and Aldous Huxley. We'll talk about some of them. Heck, it even borrows from Walt Disney. Like, there's so much fantastic influence in this game. We have so much to talk about next week. So, just stick around. And I just have one question to ask, Rob.
What's that, Dave?
Would you kindly join us next week for another episode and a trip down memory card lane? Do the thing.
Doo 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 doo.